Hey, Kevin, welcome.
Good to see
Everybody,
you.
please welcome to the stage Kevin Ichhpurani and Amit Sinha.
Thank you.
All right, quick introduction for those of you who don't know us. We'll go a quick round. So, co-founder and chief customer officer at WorkSpan. Before starting WorkSpan together with Mike and Milind, was at SAP for 12 years, wonderful years. Actually, wonderfully overlapping here with Kevin. And learned a lot about ecosystems there. Kevin, quick introduction.
I'm Kevin Ichhpurani. I manage our global partner ecosystem for Google Cloud, and previously ran the global ecosystem for GE Digital and Ernst & Young, and for a long time at SAP as well, ran the ecosystem there where I met Amit. So good to see you again.
Good to see you, buddy. So Kevin has such a wealth of experience around ecosystems. It's a privilege that, one, we can understand all this transition going to the cloud because of his new role at Google Cloud, but also borrowing from his prior experiences, both at SAP and at EY as well as GE Digital. We can see an entire gamut of software, embedded services, tech and IoT and everything put together now with cloud, right? So first question is, since it's the reInvent week, I wanted to throw it out there. Talk a little bit about Google Cloud. What makes it so unique and apt for partnering?
Google Cloud is an incredible story that many people don't know because we're still relatively new into the cloud. But when you think about Google Cloud, it's really incredible because when you think about the consumer Google that you all know and love, there's 40,000 search queries that happen per second around the globe. When have you ever seen Google down? In fact, if you want to know if your computer's down, you go to google.com, right? Because
It's the other way around.
you look at it and you say, you know what, there's 1 billion hours of YouTube downloaded every day. We've taken this same infrastructure and we've extended it to the commercial community, basically to enterprise customers. In fact, if you think about our network, almost 30% of the world's internet traffic flows through our network. If you include some of our top customers, over 40% of the world's internet traffic flows through our network backbone. So it is one of the most scalable infrastructures in the entire world because of our core business. And we've extended this to the enterprise community. And there's some distinctions, some unique differentiators that when it comes to Google Cloud, why customers are choosing us and why we're starting to get a huge uptick in our business. One of them is security. We all see the level of cyber breaches that are taking place around the world, and everybody says they're highly secure. But one of the things that's unique about Google is we build the entire infrastructure of Google Cloud ourselves. And so we have some really uniqueness in areas of security in terms of uptime. Our churn rate is less than 0.6%. So we've always had an amazing product. Our challenge at Google, quite frankly, was we never had a significant distribution channel, both from a partner ecosystem, but also from a sales perspective. We had roughly 500 sales reps this year. In the beginning of the year, we added 1,500. We're going to add 2,000 next year. We're going to be at 6,000 by the middle of 2021. So between that and growing our ecosystem, we're going to dramatically increase the customer coverage on our top accounts, and we're seeing it pay huge dividends.
Absolutely. And we are seeing that actually in the market already. So Kevin, while we're on the ecosystem topic, talk a little bit about not only Google Cloud, but in general cloud. How have you seen longitudinally with your experience cloud partnering evolve through the ages into cloud partnering?
It's been really interesting seeing how cloud partnering has changed just in the last couple of years. And what's prompting the change is fundamentally when you think about how customers are buying cloud, first and foremost, before we get to the partners. 2 years ago, customers were buying cloud largely on lift and shift. They wanted to lower their TCO, lower their cost, consolidate their systems. Today, customers are buying cloud for completely different reasons. There's plenty of what I just discussed, but more and more customers are starting to adopt a Horizon 1, 2, and 3 thinking, meaning Horizon 1, I want to consolidate all my systems, lower my cost. Horizon 2, I want to create I want to leverage your ad tech content from Google with your data warehousing and machine learning and do hyper-personalization. Optimize in Horizon 3, I want to disrupt my business model, like going from pulling lots of sensor data, selling my product to selling my product as a service, or how do I disrupt healthcare? So it's about a business transformation discussion now with cloud. It's no longer just, I can sell you more compute, storage, and network for less. So when you think about how the customers and how they've changed their buying pattern, the ecosystem now has to partner in a completely different way. The ecosystem needs to add value to the cloud providers, whether it's us or our competitors, by talking about how do you improve the business process? How do you actually help improve the business transformation that the customer is going through at an industry level to a line of business buyer as opposed to just an IT buyer? And that's creating a very unique opportunity for the ecosystem, but a different way to approach the cloud providers is necessary than it was a year or two ago.
Absolutely. And one double click on this, not only from a customer lens, but also now from the inside lens, the inside lens where the sausage gets made, if you will,
Yep.
from a sales and an ecosystem and partnering perspective. I relate this story because Kevin and I were back at SAP, and there was a pivotal moment in the go-to-market for HANA where it's an on-premise system, because it's a large system itself for multi-million-dollar licenses, and we were staring at a Q4 where all the revenue was coming largely from big boxes coming on-prem and big ticket purchases. And here we had a decade where we had to release it on the cloud for $1 a minute, right? So imagine what Andre just mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, which was, how do you take a on-prem sales compensation model or an ecosystem model which is geared towards selling one way, and then you release counterintuitively against your W-2 aspirations, counterintuitively releasing, I'm just borrowing Andre's words here, to like selling it for $1, right, at a time to a customer per hour, right?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how you're managing this transformation at Google? Do you not have the legacy issues that other guys
I think the
have?
beautiful thing was there is no transformation, which makes life a lot bigger. Because when I was at SAP, SAP now is over 50% of their revenue comes from the cloud. That was an incredibly, to your point, difficult and grueling transformation. To a certain extent, without having that legacy, we were able to really go and build this business the right way from day one without a lot of the internal channel conflict that is oftentimes there. And you have a boat anchor, which is the traditional business at times, carving it out into a separate business unit, having completely different set of independent set of metrics is so important. Fortunately at Google, that wasn't an issue for us. We had other issues during our cloud transformation going from a consumer company to an enterprise company and having to really carve out a separate P&L and a very separate leadership team. But we didn't have the legacy of the on-prem.
Mm-hmm. That's true. One last question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So a lot of us want to grow up to be Kevin and lead. I'm talking about as ecosystem professionals and run ecosystem for the whole cloud for Google, right? So, in terms of developing the ecosystem profession, the kind of skills that you need to really acquire to excel at this job, what are some things that you're observing that we should pay attention to?
I think one of the best advice I can give people, that are interested in pursuing a career in ecosystem development, there's a couple things. Number one, I think that, alliances oftentimes get a bad name because you have certain, you have really good alliance people, and then you have the traditional old school, coffee and donuts relationship golf course. And, my view on the relationship side is relationship is kind of like having a pulse. That's not any kind of differentiator or skill set that you bring to the table. That's just table stakes. Really have to add business value. And when I think about business value, it's understanding why are we even doing a partnership is so important in building an organization that thinks that way. 2/3 of acquisitions and alliances fail, but we keep doing them. And the reason, if you think about it, if you go back, and I'm sure we all have plenty of failed alliance stories, you can go back and look at them one by one, and you can see that the telltale signs of why it was going to fail were there from day one. That there really wasn't goal congruence between the two companies at all. And if you really get inside the head of your partner and understand how do they make money, what are their challenges, what are their innovator dilemma challenges, you can really see that in many of these cases there simply wasn't goal congruency and it was guaranteed to fail. Even the executives wanted to do it, but on the ground the field incentives weren't aligned, the quotas weren't aligned, selling to different buyers. There's a multitude of different reasons why these things are going to fail. And if you really reduce that failure rate, you can build a much more successful organization. And secondly, building a world-class team, and a world-class team that is not just looking at it from one dimension, meaning having diversity in the team to look at it from strategically, when we build these alliances, what markets are we trying to go after? Can we even win in that market? Can the partner and us win together, or is it just two losers trying to come together and win in a market where both of us will fail? And what are the understanding truly, what are these motivations? And then, having people that can understand the technology and how do you successfully implement these in the field in a way that sellers can consume on both sides and with the right governance structure, but really looking at it from macro strategy to technology to go to market to how are we going to go after this market together. And the third thing I think that's very important in terms of really building those world-class teams, what I find oftentimes is it's very easy to get into just satisfying stakeholders. Meaning you've got a field stakeholder that's breathing down your neck for certain things that are going to drive some revenue. You've got product stakeholders that are breathing down your neck to do this. And if you're just fulfilling need, you're just fulfilling the demand, you're never really innovating. And you have to take a portion of your time every day and think about what is the game changer I'm going to bring to the company as opposed to just fulfilling their needs as a service provider. Yes, it's a service provider function, but you have to be thinking about the killer game changers and internally evangelizing those as well. I think those are all really, really critical in terms of building out a program that's high impact.
Awesome. Great advice. So let me throw it up to the audience here. Please, what questions do you have?
There's just so much innovation happening on the cloud technology because of all the big players. As a business person, how do you kind of keep up to speed? Because some of that innovation might be very relevant to the use case you are discussing. How do you just keep yourself informed and bring that knowledge into the conversation?
That's actually a really great question, because I would say the biggest thing I saw, when you think about when the transition to the cloud world, many of the things aren't rocket science. They're the same principles existed in other worlds, and there's tweaks. It moves much, the pace is significantly faster, 10x faster than in the past, but a lot of the concepts existed. But one of the concepts is a point you just brought up as well, which is the rate, since the pace is so unbelievably fast, the innovation, the technology comes out, that I often feel like partnering in the cloud is a combination of a corporate job of the past and graduate school combined. Because you literally, and I literally still feel that way, the amount of reading that you have to do, the amount of discussions you have to have with industry experts, the level of reading is truly like, my wife often jokes, it's like a phone book that you take home every night. And there's really kind of almost no substitute for that. It's just nonstop reading and learning. And I really mean when I say that it feels like a combination of job and school combined.
Yeah, take containers, for example, and the ecosystem around it, right?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
Yes, please.
In your ecosystem with partners, you have some small regional ones as well as you're going to have large global ones as well. And how would you actually, what kind of strategies would you employ that are different for each of those to help them to make you successful?
And are you referring more to like the regional systems integrators versus the global systems integrators?
So in terms of one is scale is definitely a big difference, but in terms of how would you go to market with them from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective, enablement perspective, post-selling perspective, what kind of different strategies would you use?
Yeah. So the first thing that we've done is we've driven a different segmentation. So, the way we kind of view the world is, the enterprise, 5,000 to 7,000 accounts is largely a direct sales motion. In the mid-market, it's a kind of a hybrid motion between sales, a small sales team with a channel, and then in the SME, 100% through the channel. And so what we've done is we've really stratified the partners for, the top enterprise accounts. Oftentimes it's part of a broader digital transformation, like I mentioned before, those use cases. And so we're working very heavily with the GSIs there. In the mid-market, the corporate accounts between 300 million and $1 billion, we're very much working with our regional systems integrators that are generally the ones of choice in that segment. And then in the SME through a whole set of different distribution channels. So we've basically done it based on a market segmentation. And, it really depends on the use case as well. So one of the use cases where we're seeing a lot of traction right now in our business is around call center virtual agents. And we put out a product called Call Center AI earlier this year. And what it is just a virtual agent. Think of it, you call an 800 number, and today IVR systems can contain about 30% of calls, but 70% of them you get irritated and you punch out, you hit 0 and talk to a live operator. Well, we can actually, with a virtual agent, we can actually make that 70, 80, 90%. Why? Because we're actually using AI to train the agents as well. And so we can solve for all the corner cases. But when you go after, take a solution like that, it's oftentimes not one of the big GSIs. Some of the big GSIs have that capability, but we look at who's got the specialization selling to customer care departments and call centers that can take a solution like that to market. And I would say that also one other thing too is when you're dealing with the RSIs versus the GSIs are all trying to transform themselves in the way they make money. So they all realize that there is a huge pressure, and this is one of the core things I was doing when I was at Ernst & Young, is they're all very concerned that traditional time and materials is getting commoditized. And especially if you look at the big four, audit and tax are ripe for disruption. You can do taxation with an RPA script, with RPA scripts now. You can use AI to do an audit. It's in the lab already. And so they're looking at how do we make money through IP. So working with the GSIs, one of the things that they're very interested in doing is how do I take the platform and build these unique IP use cases and actually start monetizing more similar to the way software companies would monetize.
Yeah. Absolutely, doubling down on that comment, we are seeing a whole trend of, since we have most of the GSIs on the WorkSpan platform, we're seeing a lot of SIs building these joint vertical capabilities that you're talking about,
Yes.
transitioning to an IP side.
Exactly, and I don't ever think that there'll be a lot of business where they're selling licenses in the traditional sense, but what they'll do is either use that to boost their margins on an
Repeatable,
engagement
yeah.
or manage service. So they'll take something like what I just mentioned, the call center virtual agent, and they'll go to a customer and basically disrupt an existing BPO through a technology-based solution. So they're trying to create the next generation of BPO using technology.
Ala?
Hey, Ella, good to see you.
So my question is around working with startups. What's your vision on the engagement with the startup ecosystem, this innovation ecosystem in that sense? Do you see startup engagement as emerging partners, customers, co-innovation partners, something else, or all of the above?
All of the above, and we believe that it's the startup community is an absolutely important part of the portfolio because, the switching costs are very high. So we want to capture these startups on our platform. Our startup program, we're largely focused on seed stage and Series A. And we want them to leverage our platform. We want them to leverage our innovation capabilities around analytics and machine learning, AI, very early in the process. Because what happens is that's the time where they're making selections at a very small stage. And once they get to be of a certain size, and you're about to do an IPO, you're going to have a really hard time going to a company that's about ready to IPO and tell them to switch clouds. And it's going to be many years further before they go multi-cloud. And so we want to capture them very early on, the startups very early on. And then for the mature companies, we go to them with a very different value proposition, which is we can help you with multi-cloud. I mean, one of the big trends we see in the market, and this affects the ecosystem quite a bit, is the customers and the ecosystem no longer want cloud lock-in. They got burned in the past with the database vendors and so forth, and they want to go multi-cloud. In fact, we recently did a study with 2,500 enterprise customers. 88% of them said they're going to go multi-cloud in the next 2 years. So while some of our competitors are trying to take a lock-in strategy, we're doing the exact opposite. We say, you can take our platform, Google Anthos, you build on it once, you can run it on-prem, you can run it on Azure, AWS, Ali Cloud down the road, you'll be able to run it everywhere without a single line of code change. And so this creates a really unique opportunity for the ecosystem. I was talking to one of the more mature ISVs, and he said, Kevin, if this actually pans out, it's too good to be true, because I don't have to worry about servicing all my different customers and managing 3 cloud relationships.
Yeah, and the earlier story that you described around the startup sounds like the WorkSpan story as well.
Yes.
He started from the incubator and the startup program with Google earlier on.
Yes, we really appreciate WorkSpan was a great early startup partner and customer, and has continued to be a stronger partner, and we're very happy with the work that we're doing with using WorkSpan internally.
Awesome. Thank you.
One question I have.
Yes, Devesh.
Hey,
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
good.
You manage the ecosystem at multiple companies, SAP and GE and others, Eva, and now Google. What are some of the challenges you face at Google that you didn't have earlier? And what is the different strategy you're applying in Google and Google?
That's a great question. I'd say that when you're growing so fast, when you're growing so fast, you just don't, if you look at a company like SAP, very mature. People have been there for many years. You have a lot of established operational processes. Your field reps, they know all of their products. They've been in the job for many years. It's very easy for them to absorb something new. When you're growing and you go from 500 people to 2,000 to 4,000 to 6,000, they can barely learn that they have, and it can take 8 months for them to be productive. Now you're asking that same sales seller to actually work with partners. That becomes incredibly different. So you have to make it all the more Sesame Street simple, and you actually have to create your programs for different levels of sophistication. So you say, new seller, I'm not going to teach you my whole portfolio of partner offerings. You're only going to do this because of these ones that are simple and you can get points on the board. Then you're going to get intermediate, then you're going to get advanced. Whereas at a place like SAP, you would just take the whole thing directly to field. That will collapse at a place where you're growing this fast and you're adding so many new people. And that becomes one of the things. It's a not trivial thing. It's amazing that at Google Cloud, you can be on board 6 months and you're a veteran. You're one of the most senior people there because you're just growing and adding so many people. And it creates a completely different set of challenges. And I would say the other thing, too, is, when you come at it from the third position in the market, which we're not afraid of being the third position. We were not number one when we started search. We were not number one when we started Chrome in the browser space. We were not number one in maps. So we're not number one in, we weren't the first mail provider. But nevertheless, when you come at it from the third position in the market, you've got to do things that are completely game changers. Everything you do cannot be a step change. You have to think about, I just can't grow with the way the revenue growth of the company is going. How do I grow at a completely disproportionate rate? Which means you've got to do things to steal a category completely. I'll give you an example. Amazon 6-9 months ago said we're going to take the open source players, the Mongos, the Elastics, all of the companies, and we're going to basically just create our own version, strip mine it, as they call it, and thank you for your R&D, you're gone. We looked at that as a great opportunity because not only does customers not want that, but it was a great opportunity to go to those providers and say, look, we'll stand you up as a first-class service. We'll sell you. We'll pay our reps top-line comp, quota credit. We'll treat you just like your Google product and win the hearts and minds of that entire ecosystem where they're now taking a Google-first approach. And so you have to do things that are completely, radical as opposed to step change to be able to catch up.
Yeah, the Tech Alliances program around Neo4j and Mongo Cloud, for example, MongoDB, is a game changer. That makes sense. One last question, maybe, Nirav?
Now you're increasingly seeing partnerships beyond the technology space with the Department of IoT and tech as well. What are the unique challenges or opportunities you see go beyond the traditional tech ecosystems as well? And do you see other ways of partnering instead of applying to many partners? And especially you're seeing multi-10-way partnering to 3-way, 4-way partners, especially the polarities, life sciences.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge opportunity, to your point, working with a lot of the traditional industrials, because all of the traditional industrials need to become platform companies now. They need to sell intelligent, whether it's a machine on the shop floor or whether it's a medical device, it needs to be an intelligent device. And in fact, Now the companies all want to take large amounts of sensor data because you have so much predictive, you have all the maintenance information, you can actually go and sell it as a service as opposed to selling it as a product. So it's a really unique opportunity to work with the industrial companies, and I think all of the industrial companies want to do this, and that part's kind of exciting. The bad news is I think most of them are going to fail. And the reason I think most of them are going to fail is they all need to do it. It's just an incredibly difficult transformation to do because you're a traditional brick and mortar, and I've spent a lot of time with these industrials and why they struggle. And there's three kind of big reasons why these industrial companies struggle into becoming technology companies. They all say they want to do it. They all have set up shop. But problem number one is you don't know when you work with one of those companies, they oftentimes don't know what good looks like. You know, you just don't know who to hire. I mean, even when I was at GE, we hired a brilliant person who's a good friend of mine to run engineering for Predix. But if you looked at his background, you'd say, you know, it was Amazon and Google. That sounds pretty good. But when you actually peel back the onion, well, it was Amazon grocery delivery, and it was Google Ads, not cloud. And so you just don't know what good looks like. And you can kind of go look at it. I mean, I remember when I joined GE, the other person was at Facebook, and I'm sure perfect person from Facebook, but that's just the wrong background for that particular role. So they oftentimes don't know what good looks like, number one. Number two, the way Wall Street measures you, they can't play in the same game as Silicon Valley because when you make big investments, you're trading off traditional EPS, and you make a big acquisition of a software company and you pay $7 billion, your stock's going to drop $6 billion by doing that. And so that's problem number two. And then problem number three is you have decades of core HR processes that are in place, and they can't grok the whole idea of I got to pay $150,000 to a kid out of school that's a good engineer when everybody else in the company makes $65,000 as an engineer. And so all of these legacy processes, even if you set up a new co, get in the way. And the friction of the old company and the new company gets in the way. So I personally feel a very small percentage of those industrials will actually be able to make that transition. So it's a really exciting opportunity if you pick the right ones, but it's like playing the venture capital game right now.
Whoa. What an awesome discussion. The amount of breadth and depth we covered in this short period of time is amazing. So I thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for
This
letting me
is
here today.
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Kevin.
Thank you.